Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to NAIFA Live. We are so excited to have you all here today. We have a fantastic speaker lined up, but first, as always, we are going to kick things over to NAIFA leader John D. Richardson of NAIFA, Tennessee for the Pledge of Allegiance. John, take it away.
Please join me now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks so much, John. And now for some NAIFA announcements, NAIFA CEO Kevin Mayu.
Hello, NAIFA Nation. It's hard to believe that it's December already as we prepare for the year to end, celebrate the holidays, and get ready to move into 2023, where new challenges and opportunities will greet each of us and NAIFA itself. There's much to look forward to, and there's also an awful lot that we have to be thankful about. And I want to start by thanking each of you for your commitment to this profession and for your support of NAIFA, the professional association for this industry. As we wrap up the year, it's also a great time to refresh ourselves that all of the different products and services that NAIFA offers. Besides best-in-class advocacy at both the state and federal levels, an incredible professional development program, and a chance to network with dedicated professionals from coast to coast, NAIFA also offers tremendous benefits to each of our members. Did you know that we have dramatically expanded our partnership and affinity programs throughout the course of the past several years, so that now, in addition to things like E&O insurance, you also have access to programs like group health insurance through Paychex Oasis through our partnership with Chalice Connect, the ability to get discounts on continuing education and licensing programs through WebCE, travel benefits through TravNow, and so much more. You can find all of our member benefits by visiting the member portal at members.naifa.org/benefits. Come to think of it, NAIFA offers so much that even our most seasoned and engaged members may not know of all the things that we offer in NAIFA today. To help educate all of our members about the great things that NAIFA's got available, we have a weekly orientation that takes place every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, where all of our members can go through a guided tour with a staff person showing them all the different programs and services that NAIFA offers. And if Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern don't work for you, you also have the ability to download the presentation and watch it on demand. So you can watch it at any time that fits your schedule. To check out both options and for you to sign up for either the actual live session, Mondays, 3 p.m. Eastern, or the on-demand version, visit members.naifa.org/orientation. You know, just a few weeks ago, we had a tremendous national leadership conference and Belong banquet in Washington, D.C. More than 315 of our chapter leaders from across the country gathered. We had training to teach everyone how to do their jobs properly and be successful over the course of the next year. We celebrated our successes as an association. We recognized tremendous members for their service to the industry, to the profession, and to NAIFA. And we also elected our new NAIFA officers and trustees. And while we were at it, we did visits to Capitol Hill, where we visited more than 150 congressional offices. Congrats to all of our award winners. And again, I want to thank our sponsors for the Belong Banquet and the NLC, Team by the Minute, Advisor Group, Asset Map, CalSurance, Client Focus, Abacus Life, and Modern Life. We're set for a great 2023 and have distributed a calendar of all of our key signature events and the NAIFA Live schedule. So take a look at it. If you haven't seen it yet, it's in your member news that you get every single week, our weekly newsletter that you receive. Speaking of email, are you getting your email? And if so, are you actually opening it? I understand. We all get tons of e-communication that comes in, but email is the way that we can best keep in touch with each of you and talk about the great things that NAIFA has going on, from legislative alerts to key programs to spotlighting our members and the tremendous work that they do. So please make sure that your email address is current and that you have subscribed to receive NAIFA e-communications. If for some reason you're not receiving those communications, it's either because we don't have a current email address for you, or because at some point you've opted out of receiving those communications. So let's get you opted back in so you can read GovTalk, you can read those member newsletters, and you can stay up with what's going on in Advisor today. You may also want to subscribe to some of our various center blogs. Again, if you're missing emails or you haven't opened them in a while, please give us a call, chat with us, and make sure that you are back in and so you're receiving those communications from your professional association. It is now my pleasure to introduce Rick Demko, Director of Insurance and Head of Agency at Centric Wealth. Rick's story is fascinating, and due to his grit and determination, he now ranks among the top insurance and financial advisors in the entire country. Happy holidays to all of you, and please join me in welcoming Rick Demko.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I'm excited to address NAIFA Nation for this NAIFA Live presentation. Thank you to the committee, to the Board of Trustees, and our executive team, certainly. I couldn't be happier than to be in this industry at this time. I think the world around us is very exciting. I feel like we're in a position to really have a generational difference and change, both with the products that we serve, the knowledge that we're able to contribute. It's just really exciting. As a life insurance guy, when I reflect upon my journey, there can be a lot here, and I think we're going to have some fun. So life insurance can be entertaining. It can be fun. We can poke fun at each other, or at least ourselves. If not ourselves, then whom? So I want to encourage everyone listening to this recording that if we were to go on a journey together, if we were to get into a vehicle and travel a path, you're not going to remember every turn along the way. We're not always going to remember the names of some of those streets, but I would venture to bet that there might be a landmark or two that as we travel down the road together, that you might be able to capture some of that and remember it. Even better is if you can use that information and teach someone else how to navigate this journey. That's really my hope for all of you today, is that as we drive to our friend's house, that we're able to relay a roadmap or to drop breadcrumbs along the way so that we can help each other, because all boats rise with the tide. I know that myself, to get to either writing life insurance at a high level or even to the top of the table, I didn't do this on my own. Most of it was because of my staff. Many of it had to do with my friends around NAIFA. I've been blessed to stand on the shoulders of giants in order to be able to have some degrees of success in this business. But I'll also tell you that one of my favorite things to do is to work with other producers. So even along this journey, if you want some help and some direction, I'd offer you myself. Connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out. If I can carve off a little bit of time to help you navigate something, I'm happy to do that as well. But what I like to tell folks is it took me 10 years for my overnight success. That's a term that I've never really enjoyed. I found myself even yesterday talking about early in my career, this potential that people had seen in me. And the potential thing, some might see that as a positive. I never took it that way. I always felt like someone saying, wow, Rick's got so much potential, was almost a dig and almost an insult. I didn't want them to tell me about how good I could be. I wanted them to tell me how good I was, or the things that I was accomplishing now. What happens a lot in our business is people are telling us about things that we accomplished already or in the past. And sometimes as producers, we can also get too much into that ourselves. I hope that's not the case with you. I know that I'm still looking forward, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface for what it is that I hope to accomplish. But the potential thing, watch out when you're using that word with producers or even people coming up in through the business. I'll tell you that I studied, I listened, I benchmarked with those around me within NAIFA, within other associations, that the legends that came before me and the designations, the coursework was all really vital to me having any degree or any hope of success within this industry. Not all those designations were fun to do, but when someone had asked me, Rick, how did you get all the knowledge? Where did all this come from? I almost didn't know. I had to think back to Was that a continuing education course? Did I learn it at a convention or a trip, or did I learn it at a NAIFA meeting? Did I learn it through formal coursework? Sometimes we lose track of some of that stuff. You will discover, you'll find new stories and information that you end up picking up along the way that you'll end up seeing as a reoccurring theme, and you might share those stories. So if you're at a point where you don't have stories of your own, feel free to use some of mine or your fellow NAIFA members. Just because it didn't happen directly to you doesn't mean that you can't share that testimony in those stories. I like to tell folks that my journey ended up, traveling at such a degree, even when I came to Houston 8 years ago, that I don't typically say this, but I will today. The very first door that I knocked on, I was threatened to be shot. Thankfully, I'd had that process before. I was doing something very similar in St. Louis and had a very similar type of an experience. So I had that experience before, but the producer that I was training that day hadn't. And they were so concerned that this person would actually act on that. I'll tell you that it was a weird, broken road to get to this seat, to be where I'm at now. But I'm forever grateful and blessed to have traveled that path. I got bit by 2 dogs in 1 year. I used to jump over fences and do whatever I needed to do to get into apartment complexes or other buildings. There were times where I'd be out in a more rural area and they would have property that would be fenced and a gated lock. I would lay on my horn until they would come out really perturbed and upset. What is your problem, kid? In order to figure out what I needed. And what I needed is I needed them to tell me no. I needed them to say no to my face, not to my staff, not to my appointment setter, not to my lead originator. I needed them to tell me to my face. I was willing to go through that because I had an experience earlier that said that if someone's name came across my desk, I would ensure that they had an opportunity, that they had the ability to tell me no. I don't recommend you jump fences. I hope you don't get by dogs. I wear cowboy boots in the field, so thankfully there were smaller dogs and they bit my ankles. But the door-to-door life insurance path gave me a really great ability to handle objections, to have conversations, to try to get people to think differently. I knew that the families that I was trying to serve, they were going to spend the money with or without me. But I also knew that these individuals were better off spending it with me than they would buying something silly. Sometimes I go through bank statements and I would see things that people would buy as apps on their phone. People make weird buying decisions. And I knew that if they spent money with me, then there was a better opportunity that maybe they could change their lifestyle. Maybe they could help support their family and to break the cycle and to change some things and to do some things different. So yes, I blindly cold knocked doors selling life insurance door to door. And I wouldn't change it. I think that there's probably some other folks, whether a debit agent or even during your first several years of prospecting, knocking on doors could be a good use of your time. Do you need to do that, especially post-COVID? Well, it depends. And the alternative for us in the beginning was things like Project 200 or my warm market play. It was really difficult for me to approach that type of market. And that's supposed to be the easy market. I'll tell you that when it came time for me to do one of those Project 200s, I didn't refuse. I'm going to do what my senior management asked me, but I went about it a slightly different way. So I decided that if I couldn't learn how to prospect right out of the gate, I was really going to struggle in this business. So I went about it in a way to meet 200 new people. I think that's probably why I got kicked in the teeth so early and so frequently that I think I was just built differently for it. And I'm grateful for that. Was that fun? No, neither was getting bit by 2 dogs. And there's plenty of other experiences that I can share along those lines as well. But I want folks to understand that the trip to the top of the table was not an overnight deal. There was many markets and many times on the road. There was I couldn't tell you how many evenings that I would sleep in my vehicle just because of the location and where I needed to be in order to have an opportunity to run an appointment the next day, whether I was running an appointment at midnight or the next morning at 4 a.m. That's what it was like. To me, that's what I had to do in order to gather the experience, to be so good at rebuttals and overcoming objections that I wanted to be able. I'd stand in a room with my agents and ask them to just throw them at me. So I would take it as sport. I got enjoyment out of that because once you're prepared for the language, once you're prepared to address those things, you stop getting them. What you end up getting are the things that you're not prepared for. And I wanted to be prepared. But money was also really tight in the beginning. I remember the first time that I was even making really good money and telling my father, who passed away this last March, and explaining, Dad, I don't know if I understand this because I'm making more money than I ever thought that I could, but yet I still feel broke. In this time where I was still going door to door blindly and trying to find people to buy something that they couldn't touch or smell or write in, or it's just a piece of paper, and sometimes not even that. But before all that happened, I mean, money was so tight that I would go in at Lowe's. I would stock shelves at Lowe's from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then I would go work a full day in the field. It wasn't long before I realized that spending that amount of those hours, I think I spent, to go back and look, 80, 90 or 100 hours the first month working at Lowe's, which didn't yield a great income. And I was freaking tired. So I decided if I could write 1 or 2 more pieces of business, then I could sleep. I could go back to bed. Heaven forbid I have breakfast on any given morning. I will say that there's some gentlemen that I really respect who I think that when they first came up with this together, they do a really great job of describing this idea behind it must be nice. That's terminology that sometimes we'll hear from professionals or in our industry producers, because we look at them with some envy. Wow, it must be nice to have that type of clientele. It must be nice to be able to find prospects that can cut a check for $50,000. It must be nice to do a premium finance case. It must be nice to whatever. Must be nice doesn't happen overnight. It's so Joe Rogan and Cameron Haynes did a really good job on the Joe Rogan podcast and even unpacking this further, because Cam runs like a marathon every day. I don't envy that at all. But some people will look at his lifestyle and say, he's a big hunter. They would look at his ability to disappear and to go on these hunts. They don't understand that he still works a 9 to 5 until just recently. So I believe he actually just retired after publishing a book. But folks like Joe Rogan, who are the most paid podcasters on the planet, must be nice, Joe. But what about the hours, the talking? He was a stand-up comedian for a long time before the UFC, before starting a podcast. The man is smart, and he's put the work in. The overnight success doesn't happen right away. For me, getting obsessed and being involved is really what took me off. What elevated me was because of the men and women around me, the ones that I could benchmark with. As a career producer, I had that within my own office. As an independent, I had to seek that out. I moved to a brand new market. I didn't know anyone when I moved to Houston. The only person I knew I played high school soccer with, and he played at a pretty high level, but as soon as I got here, he left. So I didn't know anybody, 7.2 million people, and I didn't know any of them. But there's a big opportunity. So for me, the tipping point, the thing that really changed was for me, understanding what I could learn from those around me. And I had a mentor that said, Rick, I've watched you with your clients. I've watched you with your prospects, and everyone loves you. And I'm thinking this is a great compliment. He quickly corrected me. And thank you, Darren, for the guidance. Is he had said that while you're chatting with your clients and you're going through cash flow and you're helping them to build a budget, While you're spending that amount of time with those clients, I'm spending the same amount of time finding a new prospect. And it took me a while to really learn what that meant, but he couldn't have been more right. Our time is it's so limited. And it is a commodity that we can't get back. My father passing away, and then also my dog passing away shortly after this year, made that glaringly clear that I wanted to spend more time with my son and my family and producers that cared. Because there's a lot of producers that are just going through the motions. And I would challenge you that if you're so desperate in order to build out cash flow and budget for those clients are important, but it depends if they're going to pay you the respect, because that's what this gentleman taught me is instead of people liking you, you should learn to get them to respect you. That respect was so important. That was a big mindset change within my own demeanor, how I treated clients, because then I wasn't being stood up for appointments anymore. They knew that my calendar, I hold sacred. And they started to respect my calendar. They started to return my phone calls. This same mentor of mine also encouraged me to quickly, as fast as I can, to hire my first staff person. And that was really important to understand that having to make that overhead. My staff got paid before I got paid. Always. Always had to make sure that their families were taken care of because they were relying on me to perform and to produce. So getting obsessed and really plugging in within NAIFA is a really great start. I think that's base number one. I think getting involved, being active, and surrounding yourself with other producers, like-minded, that believe in advocacy and protecting the ability for us to provide for our clients is important. But if you're not obsessed, you're just going to be ordinary. And I don't think anyone on this wants to be ordinary. There was a movie, it was a Patrick Swayze movie that involved cleaning up a bar and making sure that the patrons were safe. This movie was called Roadhouse, and Ron White, hilarious comedian, decided to make reference to this movie. And he said that this guy that threw me out of a bar, he was one of those types of bouncers that when he gets together with his bouncer friends, they talk about bouncing. That's the way that top of the table producers are. Is that there's basically a nil chance that whenever we get together, we're going to talk about our businesses. There's zero chance that we're not going to share information. What happens is an MDRT qualifier, maybe a core to the table. As you get higher, the ones that are really doing the best are even more free, willing, and screaming from the rooftops what they have as far as information. The ones that don't share are the ones you don't want to learn from anyways. Maybe they're doing things in their practice that they don't want you to know because they're not cut from a similar cloth, and that's okay. But our business owner clients, they're also bouncing. They're just like the top of the table folks that when they're getting together, they're comparing notes. They're sharing information. And I want them to share information about you and about the planning that you've done for them. That if you were to kind of die, which we're going to talk about here in just a bit, and part of my sales sushi, that they're going to bring up your name to their friends. And I hope that's clear and that makes sense. I think what's important is also, so hire staff, get people to not just like you, but to respect you. And then also to create a culture where it's easy to buy. Life insurance needs to be sold. I kind of disagree with that. And I respect the individuals and the books and everything. That I have a really large bookshelf right there that's got a lot of classic, most of them life insurance, almost all of them business and finance, and some just mindset books. There's value in all of those. But to create a culture where it's easy to buy, because people like to buy stuff. No one likes to be sold anything. So I sell the way that I buy. I encourage you to do the same thing. You're going to enjoy it more. You're going to get better introductions. There's some Bill Cates language for you. Introductions, not referrals. creating that culture makes you easy to be referred. And I don't say referred because I don't expect anyone to give me business, but I do expect that they don't keep me a secret. And I do expect that they make introductions for me. There's a gentleman that I talk about sometimes when I refer to some of my why language. So I'd played some hockey in St. Louis and even afterwards. And one of the gentlemen that I played club hockey with and then also in high school with, I knew had a young son. So I reached out, one of the very few times that I reached out to someone in my warm market, and we set an appointment. His name was John. And that time came and that time went. And I don't know if John didn't respect me. I think he respected me enough to take the meeting, but he might have gotten distracted, and John stood me up. He didn't make that appointment. Fast forward some time, John ended up passing just a few weeks after that. At the time, he had a 3-year-old son. And I remember at his visitation, a bunch of us, so our high school team, we had 3 different colored jerseys. One was red, one was white, and one was black. We always loved the black one. We thought that we were just a little tougher in our black jersey. A bunch of us wore our black jerseys to his wake. And I remember sitting in the church, I was about in the middle, and I was doing okay until I saw his son. I was not a father yet, but watching his son walk down, who didn't really have much of a clue what was going on, walk down the aisle to his grandfather. Now, this kid's going to be okay, but it's not because of me. This kid is going to go through his life learning about his dad from his grandfather and his family, which are well off. They're going to be fine. But the conversation could have been different because of me. The conversation could have been, you know, grandson, your father loved you, which is why we get to send you to these camps. We get to do this for you because your dad had the mindset and the wherewithal to do some level of planning. And he wants to take care of it for you. You can go to this college. You can get married here. You can whatever. He's still going to be able to do those things, but the conversation would have been different if it would have came from his father. And I'll tell you that I remembered sitting in that church, crying my eyes out, bawling, thinking, what could I have done different? As a salesperson, what should I have done different? And I can safely say that if I wouldn't have made that phone call, if I wouldn't have reached out to John and said, you know, maybe we should have a conversation, maybe the $30 that I would have ended up proposing would have had a multi-million-dollar generational difference and change in his son's life. All of that could have happened, but I made the phone call. If I wouldn't have made that phone call, I would not be in this business. If I wouldn't have given John the opportunity to stand me up, if I wouldn't have called, if I wouldn't have reached out, which taught me to never wait. If someone's name comes across my mind or my desk, or I see something, an article on Facebook, I'm going to reach out. Sometimes just that touch, you know, call it serendipitous, call it whatever you would like, but sometimes that name comes across you for a purpose. So never wait. And I learned that from John, which I think was important. I had a producer visiting from Arkansas, and we were having a great time. We went to one of my favorite restaurants right here down the street. It's one that my father found. And we were really enjoying ourselves. We probably had a cocktail or two in our hands, maybe another in our bellies. But I kept noticing there was another table that would glance at us. And eventually I decided to engage them. I thought, you know what, maybe here's an opportunity. So I did. So I asked him how he was doing. And he was there enjoying dinner with his bride. And he said, you know, you guys are having a really great time. Are you celebrating something? And I said, yes, we are. You know, what we do is we're able to provide cash for our families where we own the bank and the IRS doesn't even know about the inside buildup. We create plans that create generational difference in wealth. And it also allows us to provide for our own families. And you say, wow, that sounds amazing. Sounds an awful lot like life insurance to me. We scheduled a meeting, and it turns out that his daughter is going to Texas A&M and wants to study finance. She could very likely be one of our new interns at our firm. I'm unapologetic about how I go across and talking about life insurance, because if not me, then whom? It's a tough industry. There are far worse producers than me that someone could chat with. And the only way that I can change our industry is with the conversations that I have, the producers that we put out in the marketplace, and trying to inspire y'all to also wave that flag too. Something that I like to talk about is sales sushi. We did it recently for an advocacy sushi that was supremely successful. It's worked well in Texas. I've shared it with Florida. I know that Pennsylvania is watching this with their own, they're hosting a party to watch this meeting. Thank you for that. Hey guys, it was great to see y'all in DC. But what I talked about with this sushi thing, yes, I love sushi, but it has less to do with me eating food. And has more to do with things that are easy to understand, palatable, things that are easy to digest. So when I talk about my sales sushi, I talk about a couple different ones, and here's three of mine. So I talk about a child Roth. I also talk about what if I kind of die? And I also talk about creating an income floor. And those three things are very easy for me to get out. When I talk about a child Roth, I talk about how I could hire my son to work at my firm. I could pay him $6,000 a year, and he could then turn and use that and make a contribution for a Roth IRA. I did not hire my son. He's 8 years old. He would do fantastic, but I am not paying him out of the firm. Instead, I created my own child Roth. It just happens to be a non-qualified account. I can contribute more than $500 a month, which is $6,000 a year. So it's a non-qualified account. It's uncorrelated, which means it doesn't move with the market. It's not tied to an index. It's very, very conservative. But what I'm doing is I'm turning $180,000. That's the commitment that I'm making to put into this plan. I'm turning $180,000 into very likely, assuming that my son is going to, if he were to be a delinquent later in life, then dear old dad was smart enough to create a financial product to where he's not going to be living on the streets. But what if he's wildly successful? If he doesn't need that money to survive and he just dies? If he's 90 years old, there's a $10 million tax-free swing for my future family's heirs. How awesome is that? Cost basis, $180,000, and I turned it in $10 million tax-free. Do we know where the policy is going to end? We don't, but it's a pretty conservative chassis, and I feel strongly about it. The kind of die portion is something that really helped me infinitely grow because I said this to the right person. The kind of die thing I mentioned to a man that we'll call Tom. And when I said, hey, Tom, I'm sure that you've had someone talk to you about life insurance before. I call it big check, little check. You pay a little check, you die, someone's getting a bigger check. But what if you were to kind of die? And he said, what do you mean kind of die? So did you know about a decade ago, I saw that companies were including the ability to access the benefit of your plan while you're still alive. And a lot of the companies are giving this away for free. If not, it's only a couple bucks. But these living benefits are really what I'm alluding to. Could you use it with a disability product? Yes, there's lots of other products you can do it with. But kind of dying, I think is something that is going to be compelling enough to where somebody starts to think differently. That story alone was compelling and concise. And in 3 minutes, this man said, Rick, no one's ever talked to me about life insurance the way that you just did. And he owned a business that had 3 locations. The first location I went to, he got 30 people in the room after he teed me up for about 30 seconds. And then I talked for another minute and a half. I asked them to raise their hand if they wanted to speak with me about life insurance. 25 of them raised their hands. We did that at 3 more offices. Not to mention this individual made some really, really great personal introductions because he was willing to scream from the rooftops that Rick knows more about life insurance than anyone else he had encountered. And that's because I'm probably the only NAIFA member he's spoken to. But he turned out to be a great client. So we talked about two. The third was an income floor. I like doing it as an additional retirement asset to build a conservative income floor with either a life, annuity, other products that we can represent. That's an easy conversation when it talks about you've already done all this type, you've done this retirement, you've done this retirement. How about something that gives you access to liquidity, that gives you tax advantage growth? My wife drives around in my life insurance every day, and I'm pretty sure I'm still alive. I want to share two more things, maybe potentially three, with you, because I want to go back to Tom. When Tom had asked me what I knew about life insurance, or, hey, go ahead and give me 2 minutes on how you're different. That was a great opportunity. That was your elevator speech, if you will. But later, after he became a client and he gave me some introductions, I had intently asked him to piece together a real estate team for me. I went ahead and I built my own dream team, a realtor, a title company, a lender, you name it. And from those 4 people, all of them became clients. Actually, I got a chargeback on one of them, so I'm not perfect either. But at one point, they were all clients. And one of them gives me $1 million a year. Every year, out of pocket, cash. That individual trusted me so much because I had a service opportunity with their existing company and their insurance policy. Something wasn't done right. I called the insurance company. I called him, and he heard me go to bat for that individual. Having a serviced opportunity can be your greatest time to shine. Wonderful business comes from that. But he trusts me now to such a degree that when I suggested that he end up doing a plan on his bride, that he end up doing a plan for his business, we recently executed a premium finance case that was a sizable chunk of change as well. I know where his family is going to end up because of the simple conservative planning that we've done. Something else that I wanted to make sure that I conveyed was to know who's in your client list. Who are the 20 most profitable clients that you've ever had? If you're earlier in your business, maybe do it as, who would you love to be one of your most profitable clients? And then really taking a look at who these people are. If you can identify traits, how you met them, are they faith-based? What type of career do they have? What type of income do they have? Do they have children? Do they play a high fade or a low draw when they play golf? The more specific that you can get, the better. If you know what they like to eat or drink, or if they like milk chocolate or dark chocolate, or if they're weird and like white chocolate. As granular as you can get, and you capture that information, now you go and find more of those people. And what's crazy is that those 20 most profitable clients, they typically hang out with each other. So spend some time, especially as you're going into your next year planning, to consider, who are my 20 most profitable clients? Do I want more of those clients, or do I want to level up? And then reverse engineer who they are. At my office, we give them a name. It's a fictitious name, and I've got 2 or 3 very specific profiles that I want to go find them. We need to find one of those this week. We need to find one of these types of producers because we know that that's someone that we can help. So figure out who those are. So I want to leave you guys with this, because this talk is from the kitchen table to the top of the table. And the kitchen table was a lot of fun. I got 364 hugs one year. And I know that because there were 2 women that didn't hug me, but everyone else did. And I know how many policies I wrote that year. And yes, all the men hugged me, but 2 women didn't. But what I like to remind folks is that at the top of the table, there's only 1,700 of us in the world. That means to me that there's 1,700 different ways to have success in this business at a grand scale. MDRT is supposed to be the top 10% in the industry. I think the numbers are probably pretty skewed, but there's only 1,700 top of the table producers. None of us, I'm sure, do business the same way. When I talk with them, some of the ideas, when people are really getting it and they're doing things well, there's going to be similarities in their mindset, how they go about their business, the integrity within their practice. That's going to be uniform at any high achiever. 1,700 different ways. You only need to find one. Someday, one way or another, everyone is going to have some engagement within our business. If you remember me talking about John had an experience with our industry, but he didn't get to take advantage of it. I wish he would have. But I'm also grateful that I made the phone call. I gave him a chance. So last thing, I simply want you to stay relevant, to support each other, to be engaged, to focus on advocacy. I'm proud that our firm is the first 100% advocacy payroll deducted firm within NAIFA. I'm excited for the future. It's going to be a fun ride, and I look forward to the Q&A. Thanks, guys.